Hello, Dr. Nancy. How are you?
I'm fine, thank you. How are you,
I'm very
dear?
good. I'm very good. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you for sparing some time to join us.
Thank you for the honor. I'm very delighted to be here and to be able to speak to the good people of Pakistan. It's thrilling.
Thank you. Today we are making history. A Pakistani is interviewing a intellectual from Israel first time, and that the broadcast is going live.
Thank you. I'm deeply honored, deeply honored. And I'm
And
speaking as a private Israeli citizen.
yeah,
So, yes.
this is very good to have you. So, in the phase of introduction, let us know a little about yourself.
Okay, I think I'll start at the very beginning.
Mhm.
I was born and raised in Chicago, Illinois, in the Midwest. And I grew up in a home, and both of my parents were Jewish. However, my father was not very comfortable with being Jewish. And I think
Hmm.
this had a lot to do with World War II and the Holocaust. And therefore, I didn't really know very much. And I was born in 1948. So this is a very
Oh,
sensitive time for both Israel and also India and Pakistan. A lot was going on in the world
yeah.
then. And there was very much a pressure in America that one should be white Anglo-Saxon Protestant. You're supposed to assimilate.
Hmm.
Um, so what really my journey has been one that's evolved over time. And I love people and languages. And in primary school, they started teaching Spanish. This
Hmm.
was the time when Sputnik went up. And I had terrible time reading English because I had dyslexia. I think I still have it. And I became fascinated with Spanish culture and the language helped me enormously. And I went on to study the history of medieval Spain. And I did this very
Hmm.
slowly. This was um, during my undergraduate. I studied in Mexico and then Brazil, so I also studied Portuguese. And then I went on to study in Lisbon, in Portugal. And during all this time, my professors would approach me, uh, ¿Qué eres tú de veras? What are you really? And I would say, soy judía, I'm Jewish, or eu sou judeu, I'm Jewish in Portuguese. And they would look at me and I came to realize that it must mean something to be Jewish because I came from a fairly assimilated home. Now, I do have to say that my neighborhood in high school was predominantly uh, there are many, many Jewish kids going to it, and many of them were affiliated and they went to synagogue. But this was not the case for me. So it was always sort of in the back of my mind, I should study Hebrew.
Hmm.
And my first trip to Israel was in 1972.
Hmm.
And I absolutely felt at home. I got off the plane and people would come up to me and they would speak in Hebrew. And I didn't know very much Hebrew at the time, but I immediately felt at home.
Hmm.
But I kept on studying medieval Spain, and I went on to do a lot of work in after I did studies in Hebrew, I also, of course, I had to do Latin and German. But these were prerequisites. But I decided that I should also study at some point Arabic. And
Hmm.
I had, before I did that, I had studied Ladino. I don't know if you're familiar with Ladino, but
Yeah.
it's Old Spanish and Hebrew script, essentially, of the
Okay.
Sephardic community. And from this, I found that there was something called Altamia,
Hmm.
Old Spanish in Arabic script. And this is Ajam, just like Urdu is Ajam, because
Okay.
it's written in Arabic script. And this was the language of the Moriscos. And the Moriscos were forced converts to Catholicism who
Hmm.
were then expelled in between 1609 to 1612 during this
Hmm.
time period. So they were expelled 100 years after the Jewish community was expelled from Spain. And part of my interest in studying this also was because I had an interest in the Abrahamic faith, and I was drawn to medieval Spain because I love the idea of convivencia, coexistence, or dukum, as we say in Hebrew. And so this was very much part of my training and passion. It's still very much my passion, though my concentration has really shifted because after I finished my dissertation, the opportunity presented itself to train as a psychoanalyst. And this was essentially doing a second PhD, as if I were doing a second PhD, many, many years of training. But a lot of people say, well, what was the connection between medieval Spain and the three Abrahamic communities and psychoanalysis? And I say, well, there was this very interesting aspect that during the medieval period, you had communities where communal identity was extremely important. And actually, you don't have a real notion of an individual until the beginning of the Renaissance, later in Western thought. So this helped me enormously to begin, I feel, to understand Middle Eastern culture because it's very community oriented, and the communal self is more important than the individual self, especially in Shan honor cultures. So I was doing all of this, and this was taking place in at the University of Minnesota. And then I finished and I went on to become trained as a psychoanalyst. But I was still in Minnesota, and we began to receive many Somali refugees to Minnesota, very, very large community. And because of this experience, I also was brought in to talk with prisoners and did prisoners interviews and this kind of thing. So those were the bad apples. I like to say that the jihadists are the bad apples that really, really make chaos within the communities. Because here was a population that was essentially trying to integrate into American society, to transition as refugees. That's very, very, very difficult. Very difficult. Somali culture is radically different from American culture that we find in Minnesota. Just for example, the weather is so drastically different. You know, it's like the frozen tundra in Minnesota, and they're coming from a very, very warm climate. So this is part of my evolution, so to speak. And I began to delve into early childhood development and wrote 5 books on the subject. And actually, it was Jamshad Iqbal who reached out to me to read my first book. and I sent a copy to him. And through that, we developed this friendship, collegial relationship. And it's been quite wonderful. And in addition, now I write for, I don't know if you know Noor Darhi, but he is head of a think tank in London that's called the Islamic Theology of Counterterrorism. And Noor was here in Israel, I believe, a few years ago as a conference speaker, and I met Noor. We connected and continued
Excuse me,
to.
Nancy.
Yeah,
Can you if you have hand free, can you use the mic of that because there is distortion in the voice. I cannot hear you
ah,
clearly.
do you want me to turn on the handy?
No,
Uh,
no, the hand free, like
the hand. Ah,
the AirPods.
I don't have
Okay,
a hand free.
okay, okay. It's
Yeah,
fine
sorry.
because there is some distortion. I guess the mic, uh, the laptop's mic is having issue. Yeah, please carry it.
Ah, okay,
Yeah.
okay. Oh, I'm so sorry, so sorry.
No, no, it's fine.
Yeah.
It's fine.
Okay, so this is part of my experience working in this area. Now, you were asking me about Aliyah, about immigrating to Israel,
Hmm.
and
That's
so
the second part of journey of your life, right?
yes, yes, you could say that. And since I already revealed my age, I'm 72 and a grandmother of 6. Um, in 1972, that was my first trip, and then I started to come more frequently. And I decided that I really wanted to come because I wanted my grandchildren to have a real tie to Israel. And if we don't come and live here, we won't have Israel. That's the bottom line. And since I always loved Israel, and I have a great love for the Hebrew language, which is uh, it's very special to be walking down the street and to hear this language that has been resurrected. It's it's really quite, for me, it's quite amazing to go to Hebrew theater and to sit there and be immersed in this language that's so ancient and that wasn't spoken for so long until Eliezer ben Yehuda decided to really sort of bring it back to life. So this was another motivating factor. And then also, when I worked in counterterrorism, this is the hot spot for it. So this was an added dimension for wanting to come. But basically, it's this feeling, and this is not uncommon to many who make Aliyah, that they're home, that they really feel home. And we don't have to worry about anti-Semitism here. Personally, I've experienced anti-Semitism 3 times in my life, and it's not pleasant. It's more than that. It's it's unbelievable that you could be stereotyped in such a way, attacked, and have your possibilities limited. And the first time that I had an anti-Semitic experience was when I was an undergraduate at the university, and I had never come across it before. I was not aware of it. So this was in 1967. But I've always contended that there's quite a bit of anti-Semitism in the United States, and it's been below the surface for a long time, but now it's becoming more uncapped. And we're seeing it much, much more. There's been so much violence recently in the U.S. and a lot of anti-Semitism. It's so sad.
Nancy, I will request you to be a little closer with the mic, because when you go,
Oh,
yeah,
okay.
I
Oh,
guess when
is
you
that
will be a little, I guess it will work better now.
okay?
Yeah, please.
Very good.
Yeah.
I'm sorry about that. Yeah, I hear the
No, no, no,
distortion
it's fine.
too. Okay,
It's fine.
so this is part of the experience that
Okay.
that I that I've had. And when I made Aliyah, I finally managed to do it in 2010, and I made it alone. I have no family here in Israel, which is a bit unusual. Many people who come on Aliyah come because they have family here, so they're reuniting with family. So that's part of it. But it's been an amazing journey. And I think that it's really stretched me as a person. Um, you get to know the Middle East in a way very different from reading about it and when you're actually here living it and getting to delve into the culture. So
How is the security
it's
situation in Israel, right? Uh, we have a perception about Israel that every mess in the world is because of Israel.
yes,
So
of course.
this
I
is a
mean,
general perception which is there in Muslim countries. And on the other hand, I guess the security situation in Israel is not very good. The continuous tension with the neighbors, and there is
well,
reportedly attacks and war is going on.
for us, we're pretty used to it in a way. You don't ever totally get used to it, but it's part of the reality. If we want to be in this neighborhood, we have to have top security, and we have excellent um, uh, military and police as far as that goes. And this is not to say that there aren't the occasional problems like with any law enforcement, maybe some more than others. So I can't, I'm reluctant to totally stereotype, but it's very good. I mean, yes, there are incidences all the time, but it goes with part of the reality, and we need to move forward. And I think part of it is uh, um, working with people and negotiating and um, on the ground very much. Now, you asked for my photo of me for this to be distributed, and in that photo, I'm wearing a caftan. And I raise it now because I think it's a very good example of how proactive Israelis try to be. This dress was made by a company called Two Neighbors, and their motto is peace through the eye of the needle. And it's Israeli women working with Palestinian women, in particular a village near Hebron, and the Palestinian women are fabulous embroiderers and make beautiful embroidery, and they put together a clothing line to help the economic situation. And I think that those are the kind of things that really deter then the move towards violence. These are positive aspects of bettering the lives of all and collaborating and getting to know each other. So it's very important. And you see a lot of this going on in high tech. And I think people would be very surprised, Pakistanis would be very surprised when you come to the pharmacy or you go to the hospital and you have a Muslim doctor or nurse or physical therapist treating you, and their Hebrew is better than my Hebrew, and their Arabic is amazing. But it's a very diverse culture, and And of course, there are politics at the higher level and terrorist organizations that want to disrupt the stability that we're able to maintain on the ground. But I'm very optimistic. I say you should never, the one thing terrorists want you to do is to give up hope. And that's the one thing we have to do is to be optimistic um, and move forward in a proactive way. And that's um, that's part
That's the thing.
of that's the thing. It's part
That's the
of
thing.
very much part of the Israeli society. There's something we talk about called Hosen, which means resilience. So even if Hamas is launching uh, missiles at us, the rockets at us, we know that that we have to stay grounded. We have to try to remain calm and to try to perceive that we're going to get through this. We are a people that have a very long history of persecution, but we are not victims. And we are going to be trying to raise our kids in a healthy, positive way.
Nancy, with excuse, I'll request you to stay closer to the mic because there is a lot of distortion in the voice.
Okay,
So
okay.
sometimes we completely lose the voice or
Ah,
couldn't be able to understand the sentence even. So yeah,
okay.
I agree. I agree. And how is the relation with neighboring Muslims? There are some tribes, Muslim tribes living in Israel, joining the Israeli army. They are
Yes,
a part of
yes, yes,
Israeli army.
yes, yes. Definitely. There's a long history. The Bedouins have long been integrated into the Israeli army. They're very famous as trackers. Um, and there are others that are also coming from other areas. Um, again, this is not my expertise per se, but I read stories about this and I have and see on the news. And also, you might be surprised, but in Israel, it's very common for seniors like myself to volunteer to go to the army for a week
Oh,
to clean. I've done this twice, and you go to an army base and you live on the base and you help the soldiers. And it's a program called Star L, and there's a website, and people can take a look at it. And people come from all over the world, and they do it for longer than a week. But I'm an Ola, an immigrant. So for me, I generally just go I've gone for a week. I've done it twice. Right now, because of Corona, the program is on hold because
yeah,
of the
pandemic.
problem of infection. Yeah,
Yeah.
we have to be very, very careful. So,
So
and
are
we
you
build it.
are you people taking the problem of corona seriously there in Israel, or just chilling out like us in Pakistan? We are
Well,
not giving a damn to this corona issue.
yes,
Everyone is out there
you
moving
were
in
saying that.
bazaars and markets.
Well, I would say most of us, many of us, are taking it very, very seriously, especially those over 65. And since I'm 72, once you get into your 60s, your immune system begins to not be as effective as it was in the 50s and 40s. So you're more susceptible to infection. So the older people are definitely, now almost everybody is wearing a mask, and it is a significant fine if you don't wear a mask. I would say in Tel Aviv, which is a very vibrant city, very young, that uh, even the young people are starting are wearing masks now. this time around. We, during the first wave, and there's a debate if there's a first or a second wave or it's just one same wave. We initially had pretty good control over it, but this time around, we've lost ground, and we have to be very, very careful. So the young people are getting better at it. It's harder for them. It's also the Middle East, and this is a very touchy-feely society where people like to hug and kiss and say hello, and we can't do that now. So social distancing is very important, and hygiene, and they just today they came out and they said that swimming pools will remain open and the beach. The beach was, they were thinking of closing it. And also aspects about, I would say, restaurants. There are restrictions, and there's incentives to sit people outside and limits on inside. There are many, many regulations. And I would say it's very hard for the people who are self-employed. It's been very difficult for them. If you have a husband and wife and they're both self-employed, depending on their area, some areas have been shut down, so it's difficult. And what we're getting back to it, we'll get back to it. I'm optimistic again. You know, it's a matter of time and the learning curve and keeping at it. But I do think that Corona, from the terrorist group, they're trying to leverage it to make more violence. And, you know, there's a lot of anxiety and terror already about the infection and the pandemic, that this is more at risk to be manipulated by the terrorists. So,
And I wonder how they are using it. Like, if I get get it right,
well,
because there was distortion in the voice, so I
yeah.
couldn't have it.
Yeah, on social media, they're talking about it and, you know, characterizing population as being more vulnerable and
Oh.
creating more terror that way.
Or
So
we may say that they are trying to create a panic.
yes, exactly. It's like pouring oil on the flames, you know? It
Yeah.
can create more and just exacerbate. Yeah, so it's difficult. It's people are very vulnerable right now.
Yeah.
So
It's everywhere.
that's hard.
That's right.
Yeah,
That's right. That's hard time.
very
And
difficult.
how? Okay, let us uh, like I would like to be enlightened by you about the Israeli society. How is Israeli society? Is it a vibrant, colorful, cultural society, or a very closed, security conscious society? How is it like?
It's it is extremely vibrant, and it would be wonderful if you could come and see it with your own eyes.
I would
Um,
love to, but my on my passport I cannot travel to Israel,
I
unfortunately.
know. It's hard for me too, but
Yeah.
it's extremely vibrant, and you know, people are people, and I think that when you were talking last night with Wilma about her
Yeah.
experience living in Pakistan, it's very, very family oriented also, and it's
Yeah.
very loving. So you have that across all sectors. Food is an enormous centerpiece in Israeli life. Everything revolves around food. And when you talk about going up as an immigrant, I went up in weight. I gained weight when I came to Israel because food is it's part of expressing life and the
Yeah.
vitality. So and it's just extremely diverse in all aspects. And um, Tel Aviv is very, very vibrant also, but it's very different than Jerusalem, which is very sacred
Yeah.
and uh, so imbued with the different religious groups, the ultra-Orthodox, modern Orthodox, the Muslim community. So Jerusalem, and because of the Christian population,
We again lost your voice. Sorry.
so so
Yeah.
Jerusalem is very vibrant also because of the different religious groups, and it's different from Tel Aviv. Tel Aviv tends to be a little more secular.
Okay. And
And
as
then there
there
are
is a
other areas.
yeah
Yes, please go ahead.
yeah, I was just wondering, like Israel is having this conflict for years and years and years now. Even now, it's like 70 years almost, or 72 years. So, what are the steps forward to resolve this conflict with locals, neighbors, and especially with Muslim community all over?
Well, this is a very big question that you're asking, and it's I'm really speaking as a private citizen.
Yeah.
It's not. It's really not in my purview to give political opinion. But what I will say is that Israel would very much like peace with its neighbors, very, very
We are
much.
we are losing your voice.
Um,
Yeah, you need to.
Israel, yeah, is this close
Yeah,
enough?
yeah,
Okay.
it's better now.
Israel very, very much would like to have peace with its Muslim neighbors. And on people to people, there are also very good relations. But it's it's in the hands of the political leaders, and this is very, very complicated.
Yeah.
But there was also many opportunities for the Arab Muslim populations to come forward and accept us.
Hmm.
And I think it's very hard in Muslim history to accept Jews as equals because we are Zimma.
Hmm.
We are the subjugated, protected class that paid jizya, paid a poll tax, or a yellow star in North Africa, etc. And I think that this, in my opinion, this needs a lot of work in terms of educating. Because if you're constantly doing us, we were the first to receive the revelation at Sinai. And this was my topic of the dissertation on Ahadith Musa. We received it first. And for us, revelation ended at Sinai. That was it. But Christianity came along, reopened it, and then Islam also reopened it. And we are the envied people. And this is hard. It's hard. It's hard to be in this position. It causes a lot of Islamic anti-Semitism that
Hmm.
has to be addressed and confronted and worked on. And it will take, I believe it will take generations, but it's not impossible, and I remain optimistic. But we are not a people that hate. We don't hate. And
Hmm.
look, we lost 6 million in the Holocaust, and this is a huge, it was huge for us. And there are Muslims who have gone, Israeli Muslims that have gone on trips with Jewish Israelis to Auschwitz to understand the Holocaust, to understand why we must have a state to protect ourselves. We must have this. We cannot be vulnerable again ever. And I think that this will take time, but this doesn't mean that we don't want to reach out to the Muslim world. I mean, just think of my own journey, and here is this woman that decided to study Arabic and Aliyah. I
Okay,
really
Nancy.
understand better.
I have a question about my own country.
Mm-hmm.
What is the understanding about Pakistan in Israeli society? Do people know that there is a country named Pakistan? Uh,
Absolutely. There were Jews, and I mean, I think you have 700 Jews in Pakistan still.
yeah,
Yes. And there were more. I
yeah.
mean,
We have
Jewish
synagogues here.
people like to
Uh,
travel,
yeah,
and we were
we have
sort of
synagogues
all
here.
the men.
We have,
Yeah.
yeah, we have Jewish heritage here in Pakistan.
Yeah, so of course, people definitely know about Pakistan, and they're very, very interested. And I'm sure that there are people working behind the scenes developing relations as well. And I know that this is what Noor Dari, when he came to Israel, I mean, he lives in London, and he took it upon himself to take a course on counterterrorism, a course that Professor Boaz Ganor was teaching online, and Noor came and taught Israel and went back and said, I want to be able to have my people also meet Israeli people. And I do this through very similar to what you're doing with the think tank, to bring people together. Because this is
Yeah.
really how we stay strong. So I was in Minnesota and I interviewed prisoners who were predominantly Somali and Sudanese. And I took it upon myself to study a bit of Afro Somali so that I could go into the prison and say, Nabad, hello, and to meet the people, and then to also go in and to meet the larger community. And from that experience, I also met many of the Somalis, and now I have friends all over the world who are Somalis. I have good friend in Melbourne, Australia, who
Mm.
is Somali. And he's he's a young novelist, and so this opens up the world. And who would think? And actually, Somali people are, in many ways, are very similar. There are many similarities to Jewish people. They love to travel. They have a big diaspora. Pakistan, you have a huge diaspora, if I'm not mistaken. Something
Yeah.
like 7 million. Yes, in the diaspora?
I cannot hear you clearly, basically.
Oh, I'm so sorry.
The
Uh,
problem is the voice is not clear, so I'm not. I'm trying to catch the words.
okay.
So yeah,
So, anyway, so this is how things can move forward, people
yeah.
to people. I
That's
think
very
that is
important.
wonderful.
The people to people diplomacy is always wonderful, and it sometimes it makes wonders.
Yes, and
So,
I also think Israeli high tech is
mm,
also another venue that has we've really been able to do a lot of outreach
yeah,
and open the way to bring to the people, because we're a kind of people that's kind of, our mentality is inventive and creative. And I'm not saying we have the exclusive uh, rights to this, but it's just sort of part of who we are. And we're a small people. There are not a lot of us. There are only 14 million Jews in the world and 7 million in Israel. And your diaspora is almost more than just the 7 million in Israel. So,
Hmm.
so you have to be out there. You have to be
And
creative.
by the way, we both share a great partner as well. Like the
China,
soft China, yes.
yes,
We we have a great friendship with Chinese, and I guess they are very comfortable with, and they are a good business partner with Israel
mhm,
as well.
yes, yes, yes. So I'm sure there are many opportunities to be had and to flourish. I really think one of the things that we haven't talked about, which is very dear to my heart, is uh, what is being taught in the school. You know, are the Pakistani kids learning about Israel in a way where the rhetoric is not one of hatred, um, and because it's not, Pakistan certainly is not characterized as evil here in Israel.
Hmm.
Um, but I don't know how it's being taught in your schools, but that would be very, very important.
I
And
guess
this,
there is no problem with the curriculum. It is
yeah,
the I don't remember that I have
hmm,
read anything wrong about Israel in my curriculum. Yes, but
hmm.
the Palestinian issue is very important, and they uh,
Well,
teach us. Yeah,
I'm glad you mentioned
and the
that. And
perspective is Palestinian perspective. So
yeah,
we are unaware about the Israeli perspective.
exactly. And one of the problems for us with the Palestinian Authority is that the textbooks that they're using for their children still incites hatred. And this has to stop. We do not do that. We don't want that. We don't want to teach our children to hate. And these are the kind of things that are easy to solve, really. And I have to say, besides Jamshad reaching out to read my first book, The Banality of Suicide Terrorism, there's a Palestinian woman living in somewhere in the Middle East, and she
Hmm.
sent me an email, and she asked to read my second book, and I sent it to her. And
Hmm.
she wrote me back, and she said, this book has to be translated into Arabic.
Hmm.
You describe what we experience. And
Hmm.
that shows you that there's a language of ability to speak about these issues. And it took a lot of courage on her part to reach out to me and then to see, oh, this makes sense to me. But that I believe very strongly that change will come through the women.
Hmm. That's true. That's
Because
very true.
we're talking about shame honor cultures, and
Hmm.
women pay a horrible price. Young little girls pay a horrible
Yeah.
price, but also
Yeah.
the men, the boys
Hmm.
pay a horrible price because
Yeah.
uh, it's not a free way of developing oneself. It's very
Hmm.
difficult. It's very challenging. And this is a big issue that must be solved. The
I
shame
agree. And Nancy, what about? Sorry, because we have uh, so many questions, and we want to know a lot about you and your culture and your country and the dynamics of politics there and the international relations. But we have the limit of time as well. So
yes,
I was very interested to know about the Sufi communities living in inside Israel.
yes, we talked about, yes, I mentioned it to you briefly.
Yeah,
I am not an expert on the subject, but I will definitely reach out and link you up to people who
yeah,
are. And as I mentioned, there's a professor at Bar Ilan University who has a tremendous interest in Kabbalah and Sufism. And
that's wonderful.
so there is Sufi communities, and I think it would be wonderful. Like in East Jerusalem, there's Sheikh Abdulaziz Bukhari, and others that would, I'm sure, welcome the opportunity
Yeah,
to uh, to even be
and
affiliated with your think
and
tank.
the, and there is a Pakistani heritage as well in Israel. I
Yeah.
remember that there is a compound of uh, Baba Farid,
Hmm.
and
Yes.
he is from Pakistan, Pakistan now after this independence. It is part of Pakistan now, and
Right.
a very, 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 very famous Sufi. Is, and he, almost everyone in Pakistan respects him a lot. And he had a compound in Israel, in Palestine, or in Jerusalem, in the
Right.
like few hundred years back.
Hmm.
Now the compound is there, and the joke is that Indian government is taking care of that compound because we don't have any official relation with Israel, so we cannot claim that compound. That okay,
Ah,
guys, this is our compound, this is our heritage. So there are few common heritage or the few common heritage connections. uh, we can talk about it, and we can even think to have something on it which can lead us to go normal in the future. Because I strongly believe that now in 2020 at least, we should learn how to live with the differences.
absolutely. Absolutely.
We we are global citizens of a global village. So yes, maybe you and me, we are having so many differences, but we should learn now how to live with the differences.
Absolutely. In my opinion, it's the spice of life. It would
Yeah,
be so boring if everybody was the same. And it's not going to be. Everybody is going to be different. So it's
yeah,
hugely important. And I think that to teach the children that it's very, very important to begin with the children because they're the next generation. And that's where the possibility is. No, I wrote a piece and published that nobody is born a terrorist. This is
yeah.
something that comes that it started very, very early on in the family, and then under the guise of political violence and ideologies, you
Hmm.
then have these terrorist organizations. But the ideologies would not be able to be effective if it weren't for violent, communally shared fantasies. Because this is what the ideologies are harnessing, and this is their power. And it's those kinds of early interventions and understanding emotions and naming them and to move forward and to be able to then accept difference, because to accept difference you have to feel confident in who you are. And
Hmm.
here obviously that is something that you were able to achieve and put together over the course of your life, to be accepting of others. And I think you
Hmm.
put it very well in the interview last night. You know, we are not on the face of this earth for much time. And I say that at the age of 72, I see this. And it's much better to be able to embrace difference, much better.
Yeah, that's right. So we hope that when this whole pandemic situation will go
So,
off, and
yeah,
then we will be able to invite you, Pakistan, and we will have you here, and we will organize your talks here.
I would love
Uh,
it. That would be
yeah,
fabulous. And I hope that I'll be able to reciprocate in some way too here in Israel. And
let's pray
maybe,
for it.
yes, that would be
Yeah,
wonderful. It would be wonderful if Jamshad could come and
yeah,
Noor. These are brave, you are brave people to reach out, and we welcome you. And we are a loving people. We want peace, and we want to make this. We have a special term in Judaism called tikkun olam, which means to repair the world, to make it better. And this is our goal, to make it more peaceful and better. But at the same time, we have to have boundaries. We have to
Mm.
protect ourselves.
Yeah.
And we take on, there's a lot out there that we're handling all at once. And the anti-Semitism that is so pervasive, it has to be dealt with. It has to be deconstructed and taken apart. And limits have to be set. This is not appropriate. You can't use
So
that as scapegoat. So,
I would like to thank you, Nancy,
um,
and I guess we would like to have you again with a specific topic of your area of expertise. We would love to learn through your experience, your research, and
I would be
everything.
very honored. I'm very honored tonight. I never in my entire life thought that I would be the first. And
Yeah.
with you, it's really it's overwhelming, Kieran. I say Toda raba mi omek lev. I thank you from the bottom of my heart, from the depths. Thank you so
Thank
much.
you. Thank you. Thank you.
Shukriya. Shukriya.
Thanks a lot. Thanks a lot. And I hope that in coming days, in couple of weeks, we will sit together again. We will have a session again, and we will talk a bit uh, about the issues which we couldn't discuss in today's session. So, with my best wishes and prayers and regards,
Thank you.
uh, thank you very much.
And thank you too. Thank you so much. Deeply appreciated.
Bye
Good
bye,
night,
Nancy.
all.
Take care. Bye bye.
You too. Bye bye.